Coming up on this edition of Out of the Blue, construction of MTSU's new state-of-the-art science building reaches a milestone with the topping off of the last steel beam. See how university administrators and Turner construction employees mark the occasion. In this video, you see an MTSU team in action. But what you don't see is an MTSU team behind the scenes, working to make sure you see all the action on the court. Meet some of the skilled talent chosen for the electronic media varsity team. Cuba in the Raw, a story of sugar. An MTSU professor unveils a documentary to help students understand the raw history of the ravaged and isolated Caribbean island in this month's cover story. Plus, highlights of MTSU's success on the hard court, all ahead on this month's edition of Out of the Blue. Hello and welcome to another edition of Out of the Blue. I'm Mike Browning. We're coming to you this month from outside the KUC, where the construction of the new science building is still underway. Construction on MTSU's new $147 million science building continues to show great progress. Beams for the three-story building have filled up the university skyline near Walker Library. The first shovels of dirt were turned in May of last year. On January 11th of this year, another milestone, as Turner Construction hoisted the final steel beam into place.
Today, it's important that we participate in this last piece of steel that's going to be placed on the highest point of this structure. We are more closer to our goal of having this facility ready for our students by the spring of 2015, or maybe just a little bit earlier. This sorely needed facility on our campus is indeed a game changer.
You look at this site, the workers have absolutely done a fantastic job schedule-wise of getting going. We've had approximately 120 workers on site. We've erected over 1,700 tons of steel. We have placed more than 2,700 yards of concrete. We've installed the underground utilities, and we've begun the installation of the mechanical and electrical systems. At its peak, we'll have 350 workers on this job site. There'll be 3 times as many people out on this construction site at its peak. This is a big group now. It will continue to grow, and we continue to look forward to everything that you guys are doing.
Once this construction facility is completed, it will provide our students and this university in this state truly a world-class teaching and research facility that will not only be the best in the state of Tennessee, but a top-tier teaching and research institution and facility that provides the best in technology in the United States of America, and we are very, very proud of that.
Now, if all goes well, construction is expected to be finished by spring 2015, with space for 37 biology, chemistry, and physics class labs, 13 research labs, and 1,500 student stations in the state-of-the-art teaching and research facility. Well, MTSU alumnus Lieutenant Kenneth Ballard, killed in Iraq in 2004, will have a California post office renamed after him. The Hope Street Post Office in Mountain View, California is being renamed the Lieutenant Kenneth N. Ballard Memorial Post Office in his honor. Ballard moved to Mountain View in 1981 and graduated from high school there and earned an ROTC scholarship. He served in Bosnia before deciding to attend MTSU. Ballard was commissioned in the Reserve Officer Training Corps before serving in Iraq, where he was killed in action. Thanks to a $100,000 donation by retired MTSU photography professor Harold L. Baldwin, a new photographic gallery will be dedicated this year in the Bragg Mass Communication Building. The former gallery had been located in a hallway of the Ned McWhorter Learning Resources Center until recent building renovations forced its relocation. Over the years, Baldwin collected and displayed photos of noted photographers such as Ansel Adams, Sally Mann, and Richard Avedon into a multi-million-dollar collection. The MTSU Photographic Gallery was renamed to honor Baldwin in 2009. High-traffic areas of the MTSU campus are now patrolled by extra security. 2 unarmed, uniformed security guards with Allegiance Security Group have been added to monitor the library, rec center, student union, and other high-traffic areas. Well, if you've ever wanted to get a close-up look at wedding dresses from the 1870s through the 1940s, Oakland's Historic House Museum is displaying decades of elegance. The exhibit is a partnership between MTSU's Department of Human Sciences and Oakland's. MTSU graduate student Susan Noges captured wedding dresses through the decades.
The exhibit started with an idea of Polly Ridley's wedding gown. Polly Ridley was a past president here at Oakland's, always admiring her wedding gown in her portraits when I would visit. Just made me think about wanting to have her dress here on exhibit and share that with the people of the community. As we started this, we found out that Miss Polly's wedding dress had been lost when they were cleaning and getting ready to store the dress. So we did not have it. We only have the portrait of her today. And so that's really the inspiration of our wedding gown exhibit. We are open every day except Mondays, and to ensure that people are seeing this exhibit, we are open every other Friday night from 5 until 8 with special tours, and we're having teas during the day, hot teas, and we are so lucky to have the Human Science Department with MTSU to help share in this with us and loan some dress forms. We're lucky to have them as a partner.
The Wedding Dresses Through the Decades exhibit will be on display at Oakland's through March 3rd. The museum is open 10 to 4 Monday through Saturday and 1 to 4 on Sunday. Well, did you know that MTSU has its own live television production team? The team is made up of electronic media communication students who vie for paid positions from producers to directors and camera operators, producing sporting events and live concerts. So the next time you watch a Blue Raider football or basketball game on ESPN, think about students, rather professionals, who make it all happen.
The pistol, back to throw Kilgore, looks, fade, corner, jump ball, touchdown!
Most Americans are familiar with the pastime of sitting down to watch a football game on television. We can enjoy the sportsmanship and camaraderie of our favorite team without leaving the comfort of our home. But fewer people may be aware of the fast-paced teamwork that goes into live event coverage and what it takes to bring that football game to your home screen. MTSU Blue Raider athletes have their plays covered by the university's own varsity production team, EMC Productions, a student organization created in 2011 by Dr. Dennis O'Neill and Chief Engineer Mark Parrish. EMC Productions gives talented, motivated students self-directed real-world multi-camera experience, unrivaled by organizations at most universities.
Of all the years I've been teaching, I've never been able to duplicate in the classroom that feeling you get in the pit of your stomach when they say it's on and it's going to ESPN or we're recording live and all this stuff on location. It's a feeling that the students need to get used to.
We had this wonderful new 40-foot high-definition production truck. It's the only truck of its type that's completely manned by students.
Now push into that.
We're not here to learn how to work cameras. You're supposed to already know how to work cameras. We're not here to learn how to do switching. You're supposed to know how to do switching. What we're trying to do is make this an elite organization where those people who have worked the hardest and have the most desire have an opportunity to stretch their wings and prove this on a professional stage.
Much like the athletic department has a varsity football team, Dr. O'Neill put together a team of students, making them his own varsity live event coverage team. The team is built in 3 layers. First, a management team, including the producer, director, technical director, and production manager.
I am in charge of getting the crew together, kind of getting the logistics worked out as far as the whole crew, getting everyone here at the same time, but also in charge of content. You know, you need to make sure you have the best camera ops and the best crew to fulfill that, because we not only, we're representing MTSU, so we want to make sure that we have a good crew to fulfill that.
They coordinate with and lead the second layer, the crew, camera operators, tape operators, graphics, and audio people.
I'll be watching cameras to see if we need to fix anything in post, that kind of thing. Mostly running the tape decks for during the show and making sure everything's getting recorded.
Finally, the crew is rounded out with volunteer members. Those students with little to no experience have the opportunity to participate, learning from the ground up and moving through the ranks as their skill level increases.
I'm learning a lot from being a production assistant, just learning, what it is to be a good producer, and hopefully by this time next year I may, move up in the ranks.
Because Dr. O'Neill believes there is an important difference between a volunteer and professional atmosphere, the top 2 layers are paid for their work. Altogether, there are about 30 students on the team, all of whom submit their resumes directly to Dr. O'Neill. He then selects the crew from the applicants with the help of the production staff.
I have some of the best people, but those tend to be seniors, graduating seniors, which means that they're constantly going,
I started with EMC Productions about a year ago, working with Sarah Fryer, who was the producer last year, and learned a lot from her and kind of learned what she did, and then this semester I kind of got to take over as the producer.
What we're trying to do now is evolve a process, and I don't know quite how we're going to do it yet, to keep the pipeline coming. Because again, I always want the best.
In a class situation, you're working with people who may have never done a shoot like this before, and you're there to learn. But with EMC Productions, our crew is staffed with people who know what they're doing, they've done it before, and we work with the best students we can find to make the best product we can.
We're hoping that it does become an elite thing that people strive to be on, because being selected to be one of the key people in this means that you're one of the best.
Slaves worked it, Europeans consumed it, traded it, and dreamt about it, and nations went to war over it.
I am True Blue.
As a member
of this diverse community,
I am a valuable contributor
to its progress and success.
I am engaged in the life of this community.
I am a recipient
and a giver.
I am a listener
and a speaker.
I am honest in word and deed.
I am committed to reason, not violence.
I am a learner.
Now and forever.
I am a Blue Raider.
I am a Blue Raider.
I'm a Blue Raider.
True Blue.
Being True Blue is helping others to reach their potential. My name is Daryl Freeman, and I am True Blue.
This is not just a recording studio. This is not just a flight school.
This is not just a university.
This is MTSU, home of Tennessee's best.
Being True Blue is working to enhance our community. My name is Kobe Sherlock, and I am True Blue.
When someone mentions Cuba, what do you think of first? Fidel Castro, cigars, the missile crisis, boat people. Still communist, still isolated, still ruled by Castro, Raul, not Fidel. Cuba is our closest offshore neighbor, but so little is known about the country. Recently, MTSU Spanish professor Dr. Rick Morris produced and narrated a 58-minute documentary film, Cuba in the Raw, A Story of Sugar. The film premiered at MTSU Honors College along with a panel discussion, and our camera was there.
Cuba sticks with you, and you can't just go once.
Rick Morris says he's proof of that. The MTSU Spanish professor has traveled to Cuba 7 times. Cuba in the Raw is his first documentary film, growing out of the observation of how little American students know about the history of Cuba.
Cubans know a lot more about American history than we do. They know a lot more about the Cuban-American history, the shared history, than we do, and it's a little bit embarrassing.
Morris says he produced the documentary to fill in the gaps of Cuban history, which he subtitles A Story of Sugar.
Slaves worked it. Europeans consumed it, traded it, and dreamt about it. And nations went to war over it. Sugar was the petroleum of its time.
Cuba's supply of the world's sugar has declined to just 10%, but at one time the island supplied up to 40% of the world's supply. Sugar plantation owners grew wealthy off the backs of slave labor, working sugar cane fields and processing sugar.
And to get at the crystals, the sugar crystals, you have to boil that 80% of water away. And traditionally this was done in a series of kettle-like vats that were tended around the clock by the slaves, usually in 4-hour shifts because the heat was so intense.
Using lithographs and paintings, Morris's story of sugar begins with Christopher Columbus's discovery of Cuba in October of 1492.
According to legend, on a subsequent voyage from the Canary Islands, Columbus received a parting gift of several sugarcane plants.
Morris notes that while sugar was available in Europe at the time, it was exotic and expensive because it had to be transported in caravans from India.
As the story goes, Columbus planted a few young plants on Hispaniola, a large island to the east of Cuba. The combination of sun, rain, and fertile soil were perfect, and the plants thrived.
It wasn't long before Spaniards and other Europeans were migrating to Cuba and Hispaniola to become sugar farmers. It required heavy labor.
When the Taínos resisted, the Spanish forces came down heavily, first on Hispaniola, then on Cuba. With few exceptions, the conquering Spaniards viewed resistance to their authority as treachery.
Lost to slaughter and disease, natives dwindled in numbers. The Spanish turned to African slave labor.
By 1505, just 13 years after Columbus's first voyage, the first shipments of African slaves arrived in Hispaniola for the primary purpose of working the sugarcane.
Morris explains that the work of African plantation slavery was backbreaking. Planting and cultivating resulted in heat exhaustion and heart attack. Boiling and refining sugar in intense heat was equally labor-intensive.
To be used, the blocks had to be cracked with an axe or hammer, then trimmed with pliers into smaller pieces.
By 1570, Morris says most of the 270 European families settled in Cuba operated sugar mills. In 1865, when the United States freed all slaves within its borders with passage of the 13th Amendment, a Cuban sugar plantation owner watched with inspiration.
On the morning of October 10, 1868, just 3 years after emancipation in the United States, Céspedes announced to his slaves that they were free and invited them to fight alongside him in a war of independence from Spain.
His manifesto proclaimed all men are equal and called for gradual emancipation.
Within 1 month, Céspedes had recruited 12,000 rebel fighters. 2 years later, his army had grown to 40,000, comprised mostly of freed African slaves. The rebels came to be known as Mambises, and they were feared by the Spanish authorities for their ruthless guerrilla tactics.
By 1874, Céspedes was disposed and killed in a leadership coup that would mark Cuban history. By 1878, the revolutionary government was dissolved, but Cuba's dream of independence had not ended.
And perhaps they would have been, had it not been for a vibrant young poet and philosopher named José Martí.
Martí was imprisoned for treason, but continued to advocate for civil rights. Even after slavery was abolished in Cuba, Martí fought for independence from Spanish rule.
In 1892, Martí entered a bar in Key West, Florida, and met discreetly with 3 other Cuban exiles. The topic of their meeting was the formation of the Partido Revolucionario Cubano, or Cuban Revolutionary Party.
In 1894, Martí led a failed revolution against Cuba, and in a second attempt a year later he was killed, but became a hero in the fight against Spanish rule.
A war-weary Spain finally offered Cuba limited autonomy. The Cuban rebel government rejected the offer, preferring to achieve full independence on its own terms.
At the urging of his Secretary of Navy, Theodore Roosevelt, President McKinley sent the battleship Maine to Havana to protect American interests.
On February 15, 1898, at around 10 p.m., while moored off Havana, the Maine mysteriously exploded. and sank to the bottom of the harbor within minutes. 261 servicemen perished.
Angered, Americans blamed Spain and began calling for Cuban independence.
Knowing that military incursion into Cuba amounted to a declaration of war on Spain, Congress was divided. The stalemate was resolved by the last-minute addition of an amendment, the Teller Amendment, proclaiming that Congress had no disposition of intention to exercise sovereignty, jurisdiction, or control over said island, except for pacification thereof, and asserts its determination, when that is accomplished, to leave the government and control of the island to its people.
On April 20th, 1898, the U.S. declared war on Spain in what became known as the Spanish-American War.
By August, Spain had surrendered to the United States, and in December, hostilities ceased when the country signed a peace treaty. Under the treaty, Spain was required to give up Puerto Rico and Cuba in the Caribbean, and the Philippines and Guam in the Pacific.
Spain gave up Cuba to the United States, and Congress adopted the Platt Amendment to replace the Teller Amendment.
That the government of Cuba consents that the United States may exercise the right to intervene for the preservation of Cuban independence.
A new Cuba constitution allowed free elections, but history shows the more popular candidate withdrew amid pressure from the American-backed candidate Tomas Estrada Palma, who supported the Platt Amendment.
He won the presidential election without even campaigning in December 1901.
Using rare archival film, Morris shows American forces pulling out of Cuba, but returning time and again to quell violence sparked by perceived corruption and American influence.
Over the next 20 years, the United States returned to Cuba 3 more times, each time under the unchallengeable authority of the Platt Amendment, each time with the stated goal of preserving peace.
The Platt Amendment was removed from the Cuban Constitution in 1934, but Morris says it made little difference.
American entrepreneurs and corporations own 75% of Cuban sugar interests, and most of the mines, railroads, and public utilities.
Sugar production skyrocketed, but Morris says Cuba became highly dependent upon sugar, 89% of exports. With prohibition in the Roaring '20s, Americans flocked to Cuba to enjoy rum.
American thirst for booze was intensified when the Bacardi Company, in business since 1862, ran ads in American magazines inviting them to come to Cuba and bathe in Bacardi rum.
Rum demand and air service combined to make the Cuban-American relationship mutually dependent. But when other countries flooded the market with sugar, the price dropped.
Cuban-owned sugar mills defaulted on their loans and went bankrupt. Banks folded. The U.S.-owned mills, whose loans were more secure, fared better.
American corporations bought up sugar mills and real estate.
Cuba at the time was the world's leading producer of sugar, and little else. It devoted virtually all its resources to producing sugar, and it sold more than 80% to the United States. This gave the United States godlike control over the Cuban economy.
It is here the documentary ends. History knows after repeated coups, military crackdowns, and economic instability, Fidel Castro led a Cuban revolution in the late 1950s and took control of Cuba. To view a sneak preview of the film or purchase a copy, visit www.mtweb.mtsu.edu/rmorris or simply email rmorris@mtsu.edu. We'll be right back.
We started in 1911 with a clear mission to train Tennessee's best teachers. For the last 100 years, Middle Tennessee State University has carried out that mission and so much more. Nationally recognized as an affordable quality university, the #1 choice of undergraduates in Tennessee. As we celebrate our centennial, we look with pride at the past. We look forward to the future. Check out why we're Tennessee's best.
Being True Blue is giving your all on and off the court. My name is Ebony Rowe, and I am True Blue.
Being True Blue is embracing unique perspectives. My name is Iris Montez, and I am True Blue.
Being True Blue is helping students solve real-world problems. My name is Cliff Ricketts, and I am True Blue.
Being True Blue is making the world a safer place. My name is Sam Willie, and I am True Blue.
Before a season-high crowd of more than 10,000 fans at the Murphy Center, MTSU whipped Western Kentucky 72-53. Marcos Knight led the way with 15 points. It was the Blue Raiders' 7th straight win. Knight led 4 Blue Raiders in double figures, scoring 15 points in MTSU's 72-64 victory over North Texas. The Blue Raiders finished the game shooting nearly 54% and over 61% in the second half. In MTSU's 82-60 slashing of Louisiana Lafayette, Kerry Hammonds hit 10 of 11 shots, including 6 three-pointers, in scoring 27 points, a career best.
He has spent so much time extra shooting. I mean, every time I'm leaving this gym, he's in here late. He's for practice early, shooting a win. He's doing a lot of extra time, and so it's just great to get him going like that.
The Lady Raiders basketball team closed out the last weekend of January with a 15-5 overall record, 10-1 in the Sun Belt. In knocking off one of the top teams in the Sun Belt, MTSU dominated Western Kentucky 79-57 as senior guard Courtney Jones had an amazing night with a career-best 28 points. January included a 73-59 win over Florida Atlantic in the Murphy Center. Ebony Rowe led the Blue Raiders with 22 points and 15 rebounds. It was her 42nd double-double of her career and her 76th game in which she scored in double figures. Rowe was named the Sun Belt's Women's Basketball Player of the Week for the 3rd time this season. The junior forward also scored a career-high 32 points against Louisiana Monroe in the Lady Raiders' 66-48 road victory. One final note. Last month, MTSU and the world lost a noted scholar. Dr. James M. Buchanan was a 1940 graduate of MTSU who went on to receive the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1986. He was among economists who argued less government spending means more growth. Born in Rutherford County, Tennessee, Buchanan is the only MTSU alumnus to win the prestigious honor. The Buchanan Scholarship in his honor recognizes MTSU's best and brightest, known as Buchanan Scholars. Buchanan spent most of his academic career at Virginia Tech. He was 93. For more information on MTSU News, be sure to go to mtsunews.com. That's it for this edition of Out of the Blue. Until next time, stay true blue.